Hi, good morning. My name is Jackie Streat and I'm a partner at Silver Levene. We're chartered certified accountants and I head up the barrister unit at Silver Levene along with two other partners where we look after the accounts and tax affairs of about 2,000 barrister clients. So I'm here today to talk to you about two important aspects. Firstly, how to finance the path to achieving a career at the bar. And secondly, I'll be looking at some of the tax and filing obligations coming your way once you do start your pupillage at Chambers. Okay. I'll also be giving you one or two tips about how to save tax. Okay, so I'm sure you're all aware, career at the bar offers significant benefits. It's exciting, it's well respected, can be extremely lucrative, and of course it's intellectually stimulating. But the road to becoming a barrister is notoriously tough, and of course it's an expensive one. Okay. So what are you up against financially? First of all, there's your undergraduate degree. Universities, as I'm sure you're well aware, universities can charge up to £9,250 per year. And then on top of that, there are your cost of living expenses. If you've undertaken a non-law degree, you will also need to sit a PGDL or a graduate diploma in law to convert to law. Fees for this can be as high as £12,250. That's for a full-time course in London. On top of that, because that's not enough, there are your bar course fees. Okay. They range from about £12,000 to £18,500, with the courses in London being more expensive. And then, of course, there are your cost of living expenses to pay as well. You're probably aware that from September 2020, the original name for these courses, BPTC, what a mouthful, it was replaced by this whole range of courses, and they've now all got different names depending on where you choose to study. So there's the ICCA bar course, the bar practice course, the barrister training course, the bar vocational course, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, all these courses, they lead to the same thing, being called to the bar. And this is something you need to achieve in order to apply for pupillage at a Chambers. So the different universities, they vary not only in terms of the fees that they charge, but also in the type of tuition that they offer. For example, contact time with tutors, the materials that they provide, the learning styles. So do choose carefully when deciding upon a bar course provider. Okay. The good news is that the pricing of these new courses are actually cheaper than the original BPTC courses. Also, many of the bar course providers, they actually split the course into two parts now, with part one being a lot cheaper than part two. So if you are unfortunate enough not to pass part one, you are not tied into paying for the full course, which reduces your financial liability. So for example, the ICCA course, it costs £14,155 in total, but part one is only £2,000, which is quite cheap. Part two, £12,155, so quite a significant difference. Okay, so what are the sources of finance available to you? Well, the biggest source of funding is going to come from scholarships and awards provided by the four Inns of Courts. They provide scholarships totaling about £6 million every year, so quite significant, and I'm going to discuss them in more detail later in the talk. Okay. Other sources, savings. Some of you may have savings. My experience of students is they tend to have loans as opposed to significant savings, but there you go. You may have support from your families, which would be wonderful to assist with your course fees and living expenses. Then there is the Student Loans Company. So the Student Loans Company, they provide postgraduate funding if you take a master's course. So if you choose a bar course that is actually combined with a master's qualification, you will be able to apply to them for a loan. Okay. Max funding £11,570, and it can be used for both the course and your living expenses. In addition to this, you could apply to a high street bank for a postgraduate loan. Loans, they range from as little as £1,000 to £15,000, but they are subject to a suitability assessment. and be aware that you will be paying interest on the loan at a commercial rate, so you will be repaying the interest as well as obviously the capital that you have already borrowed. Then there are private student loan providers. The biggest one in the UK is called Future Finance, and they provide loans from 2,000 to as much as 40k, covering both your tuition fees and living costs. But note, you will have to make your application 6 months prior to starting your postgraduate course. The law schools themselves, they provide a small number of awards and bursaries, but these are offered to students who are outstanding and have exceptional abilities, or also to students who cannot otherwise afford the fees. Pupillage awards. Right, if you are fortunate enough to win a place at Chambers whilst you are studying for your bar course, some chambers do allow you to draw down on the pupillage award that you would normally receive in your first year of Chambers. So you can draw down this earlier whilst you are on your bar course to help pay for it. Be aware though, firstly, that any drawdown that you take will be deducted from the pupillage award you would have received whilst you're in your first year of Chambers, and secondly, that a proportion of this drawdown may well be taxable, and I'm going to discuss this later on in the talk. Okay. There are also 1 or 2 charities and trusts that provide financial support, but these are rare. I would speak to your local education authority awards officer, that's a big mouthful, and they'll be able to provide you with more information about that. And finally, the Bar Council, I don't know if you're aware, but they always hold an annual law reform essay competition with prize money totaling up to 10k. It's opening to everyone who's either studying a law degree, GDL, or bar course, or even if you're currently seeking pupillage. Okay. Be aware everything I'm telling you now is all available in the public domain, so please do further research yourself to investigate. So I'm now going to come back to the main source of funding, which is awards from the 4 Inns of Courts. 4 Inns of Courts being, as you probably know, Lincoln's Inn, Inner Temple, Middle Temple, and Gray's Inn. These awards total 6 million in total, and they're aimed at covering both your law course, or GDL, the bar course, and part of pupillage. It may also include a grant for subsidised housing arrangements. So how does a scholarship application work? Oh my God, it's very scary. Okay, so you can make 1 application to 1 inn, only 1 inn. So please do your research, choose the right inn, focus on the inn that's going to give you the best chance of success. Right? You don't have to be a member of the inn to apply, but if you are to receive funding, you will need to become a member in order to receive that funding. Okay. What are they all looking for? Well, the main thing is going to be your intellectual ability. They will want evidence of excellent performance at your university. They will want evidence of excellent legal research skills. They will be looking at your motivation and serious commitment to succeed at the bar. They'll be looking at your potential as an advocate, your oral skills, such as in meeting, debating, mock trials. They'll also look at your personal qualities, your personality, your presentation, and indeed your integrity. And finally, they will look at your financial circumstances and your needs. So all scholarships are means tested, all scholarships. So looking at each inn individually, we'll start with Lincoln's Inn. Lincoln's Inn, they have funding of 1.7 million. 1.5 million is directed at bar course scholars and 173,000 aimed at GDL scholars. All awards are merit-based, and there are about 100 awards that range between 6,000 and 25,000 on offer to bar course scholars. Remember, there is no set amount. The amount you get is means tested. It depends on your personal needs. The size of these awards, unfortunately, do not tend to be high enough to cover all your costs, so you may need to consider another form of funding in conjunction with these awards. Also at Lincoln's Inn, they provide a number of student flats for bar course scholars studying in London, but the rent for the accommodation is taken directly from your scholarship award. Okay, so what is the application process? You'll need to make a written application first. Then if you are successful with your written application, they will invite you to a panel interview. So no award is made without an interview first. Closing dates, very, very important. So closing dates for bar course awards are around the beginning of November in the year prior to commencing your bar course. GDL award closing date is beginning of May, again in the year prior to commencing your GDL course. It's essential you make your application on time and that you submit appropriate references along with that application on time. Inner Temple. Inner Temple is actually the inn with the largest awards budget. It's got funding of 1.9 million, which includes 1.7 million for bar course scholars and 200,000 for GDL awards. Again, they vary in size, but they give away about 100 awards every year, with the largest being about 22k. Another note to think about within the Temple is they are the only inn to guarantee a GDL scholarship winner an award of at least equal value for your bar course without further interview. And that's quite unusual. The application process is very similar to the one that I've described for Lincoln's Inn. You need to apply online first, and then if you are successful, you will be called in for interviews. Interviews are held in March the following year. Okay. Then there's Middle Temple and Gray's Inn. Middle Temple funding is about 1.3 million, with 1.1 million being directed at bar course scholars. And again, there's a similar application process. Gray's Inn. The unusual thing about Gray's Inn is the awards are much higher. So they offer a smaller number of awards, but the size of the awards are much higher. Bar course awards go up to 30k, and they average about 17,000. GDL awards go up to 12k and average about 7,300. Gray's Inn also offers residential scholarships of up to 9,500, and these are in addition to your bar course and GDL awards. Okay, so just a final note before I finish this first part of the course. The rewards for those who succeed at the bar are significant, but the path to achieving or the path to becoming a barrister is extremely expensive, and it's very high risk with no guarantee, unfortunately, of you becoming a barrister at the end of it. So before you enroll on a bar course and you take on all this debt, please do take a reality check. Take a reality check about your own skills and your potential. Do you have what it takes to succeed at the bar? And I'm sure you all do, and you will all achieve a place at Chambers. And hopefully I will hear from you later on when you do. So I'm now going to move forward when you have commenced your pupillage at a Chambers and you're enjoying your exciting new career. And I'm going to just talk to you about some of the tax and filing obligations coming your way. So once you are at Chambers, HMRC, before I start, I just want to point out, if you are thinking of becoming an employed barrister, this will not be relevant for you. If you're an employed barrister, your tax will be taken out of your salary under PAYE, and you don't need to worry about tax returns and filing. Okay? Right. So once you have commenced your second six at Chambers, HMRC will deem you to be self-employed. You will need to complete a form and register for self-employment from that date with HMRC. Once you are self-employed, well, what does this mean? It means that you will need to file annual tax returns with HMRC, and you will become liable to 4 different taxes. Those taxes are Class 2 NI, Class 4 NI, income tax, and VAT. Just having a little bit of a moment there. Okay, so the first of those taxes, Class 2 NI, very, very simple tax. You pay £3.05 per week. You pay it all in one go for the year, as and when you file your tax return. Income tax and Class 4 NI, these two taxes are directly dependent on your self-employment profits. They are calculated via different methods, but paid together again with your annual tax returns. And I'm going to explain how they're calculated a little later on in the talk. But first, I just want to talk to you a bit about your tax return. You know, what on earth is a tax return? A tax return is a form that you need to complete and submit to HMRC every year. It always covers a fiscal year. Fiscal year runs from the 6th of April to the 5th of April. The deadline for filing this form is the following 31st of January after the fiscal year. And the tax associated with that tax return has to be paid by the 31st of January following the fiscal year and the 31st of July. So what actually goes into a tax return? Well, the most important thing that's going to go into your tax returns are your self-employment income and expenses. And I'm going to talk to you about them in more detail so that you are aware of the types of expenses you are going to incur and you can log them. Okay. What else goes in a tax return aside from your barrister income and expenses? All other forms of income. For example, if you receive interest from bank accounts, if you have any form of investments, any returns on those investments, if you have a rental property, details of your income and expenses from that rental property. Indeed, if you have an employed role at the same time, and many barristers do have employed roles at the same time, you will need to declare your employed income on that tax return itself, even though it was taxed at source. Okay. So the most important thing that's going to go into your tax return will be your self-employment income and expenses, as I've said. So what does this comprise? So starting with your income, what does this comprise? First of all, your pupillage award. How is this taxed? So any pupillage award you receive in your first 6 is not taxable and it does not need to be brought into account. HMRC deem you to be training during that period. Any pupillage award that you receive in your second 6 is taxable. If you receive a drawdown, part of that will be taxable, and that percentage will depend on how your pupillage award is split between your first and second 6. For example, if you receive a pupillage award of 60k and you take a drawdown of 10k, and of the remaining 50k, you receive 60% of that in your first 6 and 40% of that in your second 6, then 40% of that drawdown will be taxable and needs to be brought into account. Be aware, you only need to declare that money when you commence your self-employment trade and you submit your first tax return. Do not declare it prior to that. I have had clients who've come to me, they've taken a drawdown and gone and completed a tax return and paid tax on that income prior to commencing trade when they didn't need to. So just be aware of that. The other point I want to make about drawdowns are different chambers weight their pupillage awards in different amounts. I've explained that really badly. Certain chambers will weight the pupillage awards more heavily in the first 6 compared to the second 6. So watch out for that because that's good for you. If you're receiving more of your pupillage award in your first 6, it means more money is not taxable, comes out of the tax regime, and you're paying less tax. Expenses. What are the business expenses that you are likely to encounter as a barrister? I'm going to go through these because I really want you to recognise them when they come along, note them, keep your receipts, because the more expenses you have, the less your profits and the less tax you will pay. So what is a business expense? A business expense is something that is wholly and exclusively for business purposes. Note, I didn't use the word necessarily. So if you've got your eye on that Mont Blanc pen, or your Gucci wheelie bag that you want to use for lugging your files around, please do buy it. If you intend to obviously use it for business purposes, you will get tax relief on it. Okay. Other expenses that you are likely to encounter include chambers, rent and expenses. This may be low initially, but as your income increases, it will certainly increase with your income. Travel. Your travel costs from chambers to courts and back again, and your travel costs from chambers to clients are tax deductible. Unfortunately, travel from home to chambers is not, and it's not considered to be a business expense. Motor costs. If you use your car for business purposes, we can include all your car expenses, everything you can think of, repairs, MOT, petrol, road tax, insurance, everything, but then we would prorate that for business use. Okay. Alternatively, we could bring in an allowance, which is about 45p per mile for the first 10,000 business miles and 25p per mile thereafter. Other expenses, mobile phone costs. If you use your mobile phone for business purposes, we can bring in the cost of the actual phone itself and also the cost of all your calls, prorated for business use. If you use your home landline for business purposes, we can again bring those in, prorated for business use, and again, home internet costs similarly. Writing materials, pens, paper, stationery, notepads, that sort of thing. Computer expenses. If you buy a computer for business, any software for that computer, the insurance of the computer, printers, printer cartridges, that sort of thing, all tax deductible. Research, so any books you buy for your profession, red book, white book, any kind of online research facility that you pay for, like Westlaw, even if you buy the Times for the law pages, we can bring those costs in. Subscriptions, these are actually memberships to professional bodies. So, for example, your membership to the Bar Council, your tax deductible, data protection, and there's all sorts of professional institutions which you might be a member. Indemnity insurance, you'll have to take out, that is tax deductible. Our costs, my favourite, tax deductible. Training and CPD courses. If you attend a conference, the cost of the conference, your travel to and back from the conference, even if you have to sleep overnight for that conference, all those costs will be tax deductible. And finally, court attire. So court attire, strictly speaking, wig, gown, collars, cuffs, bands. Right. HMRC are quite tough when it comes to court attire. So there is only one case that I know of, embarrassingly. It's called Malia versus Drummond, and it's a case where HMRC won their case of disallowing dark suits because of duality of purpose. They keep you covered, they keep you warm, so we cannot bring the cost of your dark suits into your accounts. Okay. Another thing you should know is that you can bring in any pre-commencement capital items that you have purchased up to 7 years prior to commencing trade. A capital item is something that lasts longer than a year, like a computer, your wig gown, a desk or chair. So please do keep these receipts now if you intend to be using them when you do commence trade, and you will be able to get tax relief on them. Okay. So what do we do with all of that, your income and expenses? Well, we add up your income, we deduct your expenses, we come up with a profit figure. Then both your income tax and your NI Class 4, they are both directly dependent on your profit figure. That's why it's so important you note those expenses. Okay, so how does income tax work? Well, the first 12,570 is tax-free. It forms your personal allowance. Thereafter, your profits between 12,570 and 50,270 is taxed at 20%. Then your profits from 50,270 to 150k is taxed at 40%, and thereafter you're taxed at 45%. You should also be aware that once your earnings exceed 100,000, that personal allowance of 12,570, it starts to taper away. And you will lose £1 of that personal allowance for every £2 in excess of 100k that you earn. So once you reach it's just over 125k, you will have no personal allowance at all. Class 4 NI, how does this work? Well, approximately 9.5k is tax-free. Then your earnings between 9.5k and 50,270, you are taxed at 9%. And thereafter you're taxed at 2%. Be aware that from April 22, NI is going up by 1.25%. This is to fund the NHS benefit. Just deficit. And on top of these taxes, I'm so sorry, there are your student loan repayments. I know they are going to come into play and be paid off as and when you file your annual tax returns. So how do they work? If you have a Plan 2 type loan, as an example, you will be repaying 9% of your earnings in excess of 27,288. That's 21-22 rates. In addition, I know there's your postgraduate loan repayments. You pay those at the same time. You will pay 6% of your earnings in excess of 21k. Okay. I'm now going to move on to the fourth tax, which is VAT, my favourite tax. So this tax is actually not connected at all to the self-assessment regime. It has nothing to do with your annual tax returns. It has a separate regime all of its own. And it's basically where HMRC get businesses to gather VAT for them, and as a thank you, they allow you to reclaim the VAT that you pay on your expenses. So how does it work? Very, very simply, what you're meant to do on the last day of every month is a little test. You go back 12 months, and I know you won't be able to do this initially, but you would go back to the start of your self-employment. You go back 12 months, and then you look at your turnover and you say, has my turnover exceeded 85k? If the answer to that is yes, then you must register for VAT within the next 30 days. There is no choice. This is a legal obligation. There is no choice. So what happens once you're registered for VAT? You need to tell your clerks to start charging 20% on your fees. Please don't forget this. I have had people who have forgotten, which is quite an expensive mistake to make. So you will need to tell your clerks to charge 20% VAT on your fees, and you will need to prepare and submit quarterly VAT returns to HMRC. So what goes into a VAT return? You would declare the income that you have received in that quarter. You would declare the VAT that you have gathered on that income. You would then declare the expenses that you have incurred in the quarter and the VAT that you've paid on those expenses. You would deduct the VAT that you paid off against the VAT that you've gathered and pay the difference over to HMRC. Okay, you've got 1 month and 7 days to submit your VAT return. It is extremely hassly and an admin overhead, what can I say, and something you will have to continue probably for the rest of your career. So, why might you choose to register early? You can, if you wish, voluntarily register for VAT early. Okay. Why might you wish to do this, given the fact that I've just told you it's an absolute hassle? Okay. Firstly, cash flow. You can reclaim the VAT on your expenses. Now, if you're paying VAT on your chamber's rent and expenses, this could be considerable. Moreover, you can go back 4 years and reclaim the VAT on any business items you have purchased, not any business, any capital business items that you've purchased over the last 4 years. Remember, a capital item, something that lasts longer than a year, like a computer, wig, gown, desk or chair. Right? So you can reclaim the VAT return, the VAT on those expenses within your first VAT return. So cash flow. Second advantage to registering early, you will look more established. If you are not charging VAT on your fees, your clients will know that your turnover is below 85k. If you are charging it, they won't know what your turnover is, and you will automatically look more established. And the third benefit to registering for VAT early is that you will never make the mistake of going over that threshold of 85k and forgetting to register for VAT. So I have had clients who come to me a year down the line. Yeah, you're furiously busy in your first year. So they came to me a year down the line, they've been so busy, didn't realise, went over the threshold a year ago. And what happens in that circumstance? Well, unfortunately, they have to register at the correct time. So we have to go back a year, they have to register within the 30 days of that year, and then any invoices that were raised post that year, well, HMRC will deem that VAT has been charged, and that money is payable to HMRC. So it's quite an expensive mistake to make. I just want to touch on one last point about about VAT, which is new delightful legislation that's come into place called Making Tax Digital. It currently affects anyone who is over the VAT threshold and VAT registered, but from April 22 it will affect everyone who is VAT registered. And what does it mean? It means that for VAT purposes only, you will need to store every single business transaction digitally in some sort of software. You will need to store the date, amount, description, and VAT. Right. It also means that you will need to submit your VAT returns using what they call functional compatible software. It's quite a mouthful, such as Xero, Sage Cloud, QuickBooks. These pieces of software, unfortunately, they cost money, okay, unlike the lovely, simple, free VAT interface that HMRC provides today. Okay, so that is coming your way. At Silver Levene, we use something called Xero. Xero has the ability to link up directly to your business bank account, so we can pull in your business transactions automatically. We would also give you an app called Dext, which will allow you to snapshot your invoices on the go and have them feed directly into our software. That's how we deal with the delightful Making Tax Digital legislation. Okay. So I just want to, I'm coming to the end, and I just want to tell you about the golden rule. So if you forget everything that I've said today, the most important thing you need to remember, you need to take away with you today, is that if you are self-employed, you must put money aside as you go along for tax. Do not wait until you come to file your tax return to start thinking about saving for this. I would suggest that you put at the early stages of your career about 25% of all your fees received, including your pupillage award that you receive in your second six, put it aside into a separate interest-bearing account. And don't touch it till your accountant tells you what your tax bill is. Okay. Regards VAT, remember VAT is not your money. Yeah, they've just got you gathering it on their behalf. Not your money. Please put a sixth of your receipts when you're VAT registered into a separate account for VAT, and only touch it when you come to prepare your VAT returns. Okay, and final point, I just wanted to tell you about our first year free offer that we offer to new pupils, whereby we would prepare your accounts and your tax return free of charge. We would also register you for self-employment and for VAT when you're ready to be registered. And there'll be a face-to-face meeting with a partner to discuss any queries you may have. Okay. Thank you very much for your time.